The Mighty 790 and 104.7 KFGO. Good afternoon. Welcome back to The Drive. My name is Dan Michaels. Paulie Lyons is our producer, and you just heard Mr. Driggins, the KFGO News Center. We're going to have to go over the names of those snowplows again. That was good. Plowy McPlowface. I like that. That's right out of Seinfeld or something, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
411 on the Mighty 790 and 104.7 KFGO. The Perseverance is roving around Mars as we speak right now. It was so exciting last week watching the Perseverance land, watching the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the Johnson Space Center people go absolutely nuts when everything worked and it landed, gave us back the telemetry and let us know that it's there. Absolutely riveting. I hope you are watching this as well. And that takes us to our guest today, space expert Rod Pyle. He is an author, editor, frequent keynote speaker on space subjects. He's authored 17 books on space exploration and development, and he's written extensively for NASA and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Caltech, and many other publications and venues, and is the editor-in-chief of Ad Astra magazine. He's got quite a resume. Would you please welcome to the Mighty 790 and 104.7 KFGO, Mr. Rod Pyle. Hi, Rod. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Where are we talking to you from?
I am spending my pandemic quarantine on a boat in lovely San Diego Bay.
Oh,
so that's where I've been for the last year.
Oh.
And I bet it's chilly where you are.
No, it's great. People are wearing shorts here in Fargo today. It hit 50 degrees. Yeah, we were in the deep freeze a couple of days ago. We were in this cold snap for weeks, and we had water mains snapping and all sorts of weird things going on.
Gosh.
My car died. I had two cars actually die. And now all of a sudden the weather's turned and everybody's just running around. The snow is melting. It's just a beautiful day. Nothing, I'm sure, like San Diego Harbor, however.
Well, that's fantastic. No, down here, we thin-skinned Californians, when it hits 50, we all start shivering and putting on our sweatshirts because it's just unmanageable for us, sorry.
Well, I tell you what, when you're as smart as Rod is and have written 17 books, you can get a boat in San Diego Harbor one day too. But we're very thankful that you're with us today and able to talk. So, Rod, is it Dr. Rod Pyle?
Not yet.
Okay.
Working on it, but for now it's just Mr.
Okay.
By the way, the lead-in music you played,
Yes.
I don't know when the last time you heard that was. The last time I heard it was in 2018 when Elon Musk launched his first test flight of the Falcon Heavy. That absolutely brilliant moment, the pinnacle of PR in the history of space since Apollo 11, when the fairing opened up on that rocket to reveal his cherry red Tesla Roadster with Starman sitting in it. That was goosebump time, and what a brilliant thing it was.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's a great tune. Boy, they used it in The Martian and all sorts of other great. And I'm going to ask you about The Martian as we get going as well. Anyway, We want to talk to Rod today mostly about Perseverance, or as the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, people have named it Percy. I love it. Perseverance is Percy for short. So when we mention Percy, we're talking about the lander, the rover that's on Mars right now. Rod worked at NASA's JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and the Johnson Space Center, has produced numerous documentaries for the History Channel and Discovery Communications. So let's get his expertise on the air right away. Why is Perseverance different from other landers that have gone to Mars?
Well, that's a really good question, because to the first look, it appears just like Curiosity. It's the same general design, had the same landing system called Skycrane, same robotic arm, but it's very different in a number of ways. A lot has been learned since Curiosity landed in 2012, and so there are small improvements like stronger wheels and slightly different instrumentation and so forth. But the main thing is Perseverance. It really represents the first true astrobiology mission since the Vikings of the 1970s. And when I say astrobiology, I mean this is the first probe that's gone to any other world besides our own that is actually looking for signs of life past or present on another planet. And that is really the main part of its portfolio, is to do that. And part of that is with instrumentation. Most of it's out on the end of that robotic arm that you see on all these rovers. Various ways of looking at dirt and rock and soil to try and see if there are organic structures in there that may indicate fossilized life or some kind of present microbial life. But probably the coolest part is that it's actually going to drill core samples. It's got this core drill about the size of a small cigar. It's going to drill up to 30 or 32 core samples, seal them in little titanium tubes, and then kind of toss them over its shoulder as it drives along. And in 6 or 7 years, we hope, a joint U.S. and European mission will go with another rover to pick those samples up, drive them back to a rocket that launches them into Mars orbit, and then from there they get sent back to Earth. And then we'll finally be able to see what a piece of Mars looks like.
That is so fascinating that they're going to do this. I've watched the NASA animation, and it's just fascinating. It's, you know, it's right out of Saturday morning cartoons where we have arrived at this level that we can do this. Even when the Perseverance was landing, the way that it landed, and I'd like you to walk us through it. It was, you know, Star Wars. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's the Skycrane system. And back in about 2008, when most of us in the space press saw this design for the first time, we went, huh? Fortunately, because I had contact with people at JPL, and this was before I was working there, but I was writing a book about Curiosity, so I was able to get to the engineers and say, what are you guys thinking here? Or are you thinking or drinking? What's going on? And the chief engineer at the time, who's now the chief engineer for the whole lab, a brilliant guy named Rod Manning, actually said, you know, traditionally you land a rover on top of a landing stage. And so ramps go down, then it drives off and does its business. This is what the Chinese are going to be doing in a couple of months. So the problem is, with a big, heavy rover like Curiosity, there's a couple of things. Adding the weight of the landing stage makes it really, really heavy, and weight's a big problem in Mars because the atmosphere is so big and so thin. But also, it's a little bit like trying to balance a bowling ball on a broomstick. You've got this mass up high, and then the rocket engine is down low, and that creates a lot of problems. So he says, from our point of view, this had the fewest potential points of failure, even though it looks very complicated. So the basic profile, if you'd like me to walk you through that, is the spacecraft leaves Earth on an Atlas V rocket, goes out of Earth orbit, goes to Mars, and it's like a bullet out of a hunting rifle. It doesn't go into orbit around Mars and hang around and scratch its head and say, I think I'll land over there like the Vikings did in the 70s. It goes straight into the atmosphere, hits the atmosphere at a high rate of speed, 12,000 miles an hour. Now, the Martian atmosphere is only about 100th the density of Earth, so it's just thick enough to cause a lot of heating problems, but not thick enough to really help with slowing it down enough. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds, if you will.
Okay.
So hurtles into that atmosphere at 12,000 miles an hour, glides on its heat shield, which is a slightly oblate shape, so it actually can steer and glide where it wants to go because it's aiming for this one region called Jezero Crater, and it ejects a couple of heavy weights to help it balance itself and guide, and it's got little maneuvering jets. Finally, at about 8 miles altitude, the parachute ejects, and this is ejecting a hunk of cloth at supersonic speeds. And parachutes don't like supersonic speeds. They like to tear and snarl, and they behave like wild animals. So that was a very tough thing to figure out, but it worked. And then finally, at about 5 miles up, the heat shield drops off. The rover itself drops out of this aeroshell, which is that cone-shaped thing. It looks like a space capsule. And then it has powered descent. So it's got this rocket pack over the top with these little rocket motors that are firing that slowly lower it down towards the surface. And this is where it really gets wacky. When it hits about 70 feet, the rockets throttle up and it hovers just long enough, as you saw in the video that came back, which was amazing, to lower the rover down on these tethers. And then the second the rover wheels touch the ground, it sends up a signal. The tethers detach, the rocket pack flies away and crashes a couple miles away so it won't foul up the landing site. And there's your rover right on its wheels, no landing gear necessary. You're ready to go, more or less.
That is just so Star Wars. I just, that is so cool. And it does it all automatically, with tech. It's just amazing. If there were Martians up there and you watch that land, you'd be like, wow, who's coming?
What the heck?
Yeah.
Well, and you bring up a very good point. At this point in the orbits between Mars and Earth, a radio signal takes about 12 minutes one way to get there and another 12 to get back. So this thing is completely on its own from the time it enters the atmosphere till it hits the ground. And one thing that a lot of people don't know, which makes it even more challenging, is the computer processing chip that runs this thing is the PowerPC chip that would have come with your 1999 Mac G3. The reason it's so old is because these chips have to be radiation proof and hardened, militarized, if you will. And that doesn't happen very often because it's an expensive process. So it's still about $500,000 to buy one of these things, even though it's effectively 20 years out of date. So those engineers have done all that programming with very old technology.
Incredible. We're talking to Rod Pyle this afternoon. He's walking us through what's going on Mars with the Perseverance. We're quickly running out of time, Rod. The cargo included an experiment to create oxygen from Ingenuity, the first flying machine on the planet. Can you quickly walk us through that and express how important it is that works?
Sure. So Ingenuity is the Mars helicopter. Again, very thin atmosphere. First time they've tried this. So it's got 2 4-foot rotor blades on it and a little solar cell. Its main job is to do 5 flights over the next few months, pop up, get a look around, transmit the images back to the rover to come back to Earth, and just let us know that it works. The experiment you're talking about to convert Martian air to oxygen is called MOXIE, and that's really important because a bigger version of that, assuming that works, will be sent to Mars in a few years to tank up oxygen for future astronauts to land and breathe and use for rocket fuel. So that's a big turning point in our goal to send humans to Mars.
Absolutely. If that works, that's going to change everything.
Yeah, it does. And that's going to be an incredible moment. And I interviewed the principal scientist from it day before yesterday for a magazine article I'm working on. And he's so excited he's vibrating, and I can't blame him. He's been working on this for 20 years. He's just like, fingers crossed, man. But it takes so much power to run that experiment. They got to charge the rover up for a day and then shut everything else off while that experiment runs. So it's going to be a big moment.
Hey, the motion picture, The Martian, could it ever look like that? Did they get it right?
More or less. You know, the main problem with that movie, and they had NASA advisors, is the whole idea at the beginning is, oh, God, we've got to take off because the wind's going to make the rocket tip over. I mean, you could stand on Mars just by yourself in a 200-mile-an-hour wind and barely feel it because the air is so thin.
Okay.
So that was kind of dorky. And the ascent thing, and, you know, you can't spend time around Martian soil growing potatoes because it's got nasty chemicals in it and will make your eyes foam up and your lungs turn inside out. But other than that, you know, it was okay, but it was cool to watch. Right?
Yeah, it was cool. It was so cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Rod, you are a thrill to talk to, and I barely even scratched. I wrote out so many questions, and we barely scratched the surface, and we're running out of time. Rod, can we come back and do this again? Can we for sure be on the air around July, around the anniversary of Apollo 11?
Absolutely. That would be fun.
Okay, I'm going to get you booked tomorrow for this. I'll just send a note back to you. Because Rod has written a book called First on the Moon, the Apollo 11 50th Anniversary Experience. And we'll talk to him about that. And if something goes on with Perseverance, we'll call again. Rod, you're just brilliant. I love talking to you, and I'm so jealous that you're on a boat in San Diego Harbor.
Thanks. My great pleasure talking to you. Have a good evening.
You bet. Thanks so much. Rod Pyle today, who is a space expert, author, editor, and keynote speaker on space subjects. We'll have him back again. We'll have a lot more time for it, too. KFGO time is 4:24. You're listening to The Drive with Dan Michaels on the Mighty 790 and that 100,000-watt flamethrower, 104.7. This is KFGO.
The voice of the Valley on 100,000 watts of FM power, 104.7.